This is a special one-hour edition of WLOX News at 6. Coastal Crisis.
Welcome back. We're now at the end of the 5th week of the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. 35 days of watching the oil spew into the Gulf and wondering if, for instance, some pictures taken over the weekend by a viewer, Jason Privet, this picture near Horn Island, are actually of oil or something else. We're going to talk about that in a moment. There are a lot of concerns and so many fears. Is our seafood safe to eat? Will the Gulf become any type of a wasteland? Will the sea life and the birds survive? Now it's time to get some answers for South Mississippi about the impact of the oil spill in our community. In our studio tonight, good enough to join us, Congressman Gene Taylor, also with us from the Unified Command over in Mobile, U.S. Coast Guard Captain Stephen Pullen. The BP Incident Commander from the Unified Command in Mobile, Keith Sayon, is also with us. Dr. William Walker is the Executive Director of our State's Department of Marine Resources, Dr. Walker on the right. And from the Northern Gulf Institute, Dr. Michael Carron. Let's begin, first of all, gentlemen. First of all, I thank all of you for coming. I know you're busy people. The picture we just saw, that there's some speculation, is that or isn't that oil? Well, let's begin with you, Dr. Walker. You and Congressman Taylor flew over that spot Saturday. Is it oil?
It's not oil, Jeff. We sampled that actually yesterday. We analyzed it today. It's an algal bloom. There's a lot of algae blooming out there now, some bacterial slicks as well, not associated with the oil, simply there because of the hot water and the high temperatures.
Okay. You know as well as we do, Governor Barbour has talked about this a lot, and he's insisted that there was no oil in Mississippi waters. Go on record. Is that still the case at this moment?
Yes, it is. The closest oil that I've seen to Mississippi is about 55 miles away from here, and BP has 2 skimmer vessels out there today. If it's skimmable, they'll skim it. The bulk of the oil is still 65 or 70 miles south of where we're sitting today.
Okay, on that subject, let's toss it over to Dr. Carron. In terms of the oil, we've seen what's happening in Louisiana, but let's talk about Mississippi. In terms of what that oil is doing, is it an accurate statement to say maybe it's going to come here, or instead is it just a question of when it comes here, from what you know at this point, Doctor?
I think we have, we're not clairvoyant on this, but I really believe that right now we can say maybe. I mean, I think there's a possibility that it'll come here, but I asked Mike Reeder to do a little cartoon for me. I'm not sure if you're showing it or not now, but this time of year, the currents that flow along the Mississippi coast flow from east to west, and they tend to flow towards Louisiana and then turn south. And this cartoon just sort of a little snapshot of that, but I think that's what's been holding the oil off. We have a southeast wind which pushes everything towards the northwest, but those currents have to go someplace and they come back down towards the south. Now, if anything happened, like a tropical disturbance or something, that may change that whole situation, and then we might be looking at the oil coming up this way.
Yeah, that's one of the issues we want to talk about in a few minutes. But one of the unique things about this program tonight is we are having interactive, if you will, comments from viewers and questions that have been sent to our website at WLOX.com, as well as our WLOX Facebook. One of the questions, Suzanne Marie Polk poses this question: if we can send men to the moon, why can't we fix a leak? Who wants to tackle that one?
Well, I'll just start by saying it's 5,000 feet down.
Yeah.
I was serving on the Armed Services Committee. I was on the phone weeks ago with Admiral Gary Ruffedge, Chief of Naval Operations. I asked him to make whatever the Navy has available, and it turns out that, without getting into anything classified, what the Navy does down deep is mostly intelligence gathering. Mm-hmm. And that is not plugging oil rigs. And so the expertise on this is in the private sector. We do know from a conversation with Captain Stanton that the cement shot will be Wednesday morning. Mm-hmm. Most people can go online and see the preparations that are being made. And everybody's disgusted that it's taken so long, quite honestly, but being 5,000 feet under the floor of the ocean certainly makes things difficult.
All right. Mr. Keith Sayon from BP, the same question that the lady posed. 2 totally different situations, but it's a question I'm sure you've heard before. We sent somebody to the moon. We cannot, 35 days after it happened, stop this oil spill.
Well, Jeff, what I'd like to say, we appreciate the fact that we have this opportunity, because one of our primary objectives here is to inform the public on what's going on and answer their questions. I can't help but remind myself and Captain Pullen and I that 11 people perished on this incident the night it happened. And I can't even imagine what the families of these people are feeling right now. And so when you think about these questions, they're all very important, but I go back to those individuals and their families, and hopefully we can do everything we can to help them basically get through this situation. Regarding the challenges of working in deep water, I've been working in deep water for most of my career, and we tend to make things that look very complicated, look easy. And this is a challenge. This is nothing that we've ever had to face. We have similar challenges, but it is like space technology, and there's really it's always a new challenge, and so we're doing the best we can with the people we have, and I think we're going to continue to make progress.
But undoubtedly there was a disaster scenario that any oil company takes a look at. If this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do that.
Yeah, you're right, and so for us that is discouraging. That we did plan for, that's why we put the blowout preventers at the seafloor. It's the safest place for those. Something went wrong, and our CEO is committed to the fact that he's going to work with the federal agencies, identify what happened, and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again. So it's a significant challenge, and it's a tragic event. We're doing everything we can to respond to it.
Let's take another question here. This came from Nancy McCardle. She asks, if the government pushes BP out of the way and takes over, does the government have scientists more capable of solving the problem than the scientists that BP is using? Let me begin with Captain Pullen from the Coast Guard in Mobile.
Well,
you want to tackle that one?
Sure. First, thanks for having us here. And
Sure.
Congressman Taylor, I appreciate your leadership on this issue. It's good to see you again, sir. BP clearly understands that they're the responsible party for this incident. My responsibility as the Federal On-Scene Coordinator's representative and the Federal Incident Commander is to ensure that BP conducts an efficient and effective response. We've worked closely and are continuing to work closely with BP, and I think we're achieving our goal. Our responsibility, Keith, and my responsibility is the near-shore environment in coastal Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle, and I'm confident that we're prepared.
Okay. Again, Mr. Sayon from BP. The Interior Secretary, Mr. Salazar, less than 24 hours ago said he's not 100% confident that BP knows what it's doing. Now, when the people on the coast in America heard that quote yesterday, they undoubtedly said, are you kidding me? That our government isn't confident 35 days into this, that with all due respect, that BP knows what it's doing?
Well, I respect his judgment on this because it's a quite complex problem. There's lots of people that have never dealt with this particular problem, and it's very novel to have to deal with this kind of a challenge at 5,000 feet of water. Again, we did everything we could to prevent this kind of event from happening, but it did happen, and now we have to respond to it. And for us, for myself and Captain Pullen, our objective, working with the state agencies, is to mount the most effective shoreline protection we possibly can. And that's what we've been doing. And we've also tried to do everything we can to ensure no one, in addition, gets seriously injured and that the public does not get in any danger.
The BP has been very upfront in terms of saying we're in charge of cleaning this up. In terms of who's in charge of BP, correct us if we're wrong here, Captain. The Coast Guard is more or less overseeing BP's effort. Is that correct?
That's correct. BP, as I said, is a responsible party. And I believe I heard Admiral Allen, the National Incident Commander, once describe it this way. BP is a responsible party, but the Coast Guard Incident Commander is the accountable party. So it's our responsibility to ensure that BP does what it's responsible for, and that is to clean up the oil, to prevent shoreline impact, and if there is impact, to clean it up and restore the environment. And that's what I'm committed to doing.
Only about a minute before we go to break, but based on what you said, are you confident that BP's doing that?
Keith and I work very closely every day. We've got a tremendous team assembled over in Mobile, which is where our incident command post is. And I've never seen a more dedicated group of people who are working hard for people in Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. So I'm confident that we've got a good strategy and we're implementing that effectively.
All right, thank you, sir. We're going to continue our coastal crisis coverage in just a moment. More of your questions. Stay tuned.